Let's hit it.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about the mental change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I hope you enjoyed the opening music. It's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band, and you can download that on any of your favorite music platforms if you like. For those of you that are new to our show, Alzheimer's Speaks is about sound information, not just sound bites. We like to have real conversations with real people, and we're going to do just that today. We have an excellent panel with us, and we are going to be talking about something fairly new called Zinnia TV, which is perfect for people kind of mid to end stage with Alzheimer's and dementia, but it is applicable for a lot of other things, including myself when I just need a little peace and calmness in my life. So please stay with us. Alzheimer's Speaks is something where we interview everybody all around the world. So we want to raise everyone's voice, from those living with a diagnosis to families and professionals caring for them, to researchers and advocates, to kids. Everybody is impacted by this disease, and we don't want to fool ourselves for 1 second thinking anything different, because when we come together, we can make sustainable change faster. So please join us and spread the word to others. Now, before I introduce our guest, I always like to do some shout outs. So first, I want to shout out to the Dementia Map, which is a global resource directory that we just launched not too long ago. And it is free to use 24/7. You don't have to register. You don't need a password, a membership, none of that stuff. And we have a variety of categories, in fact, 150 categories, and we are always open to adding more resources, tools, and products. So please check out dementiamap.com. There you will find a couple of platforms that I'm going to tell you about. One is the Memory Cafe directory. There are almost 200 memory cafes around the world now that are doing virtual events, and there's about 1,000 of them total to be able to pick from. Many are starting to go back in person now, so check that out. Go to Memory Cafe directory, and then Coral Health is still allowing people to go ahead and download 2 of their music apps, Music First and Coral Faith free. So go to coralhealth.com. That's CORO health.com. And I also want to mention that I do a memory cafe, and anyone is welcome to join us. We do that virtually. It is sponsored by Arthur's Senior Living. We do that on the 2nd and the 4th Wednesday of each month at 1 o'clock, and that is virtual. You can reach out to me for more information on that. I'm also doing a caregiver support group for Brookdale, and that one we meet in person in Shoreview, Minnesota. And you can register by calling 763-913-6140. And we do that on the last Wednesday of each month between 10 and 11 a.m. Central Time. Coming up on August 10th, I will be doing a virtual presentation that anyone is welcome to join us. It's free through Artist Senior Living, and we're going to be talking about conscious, compassionate care for the care partner, because you know what? We can't give good care if we're not taking care of ourselves. So we're going to talk about things that aren't always talked about when we discuss care. Also want to give a shout out to the Brain Donor Project. That's braindonorproject.org. It is important that people sign up to donate their brains, both healthy and those that are living with a form of dementia. And then last, I'm going to give a shout out to a conference. It's an international conference called Together for Dementia, and that'll be held November 2nd. And that is being sponsored by the Dementia Research Charity Brace. And you can find more information on all of these at Alzheimer's Speaks, or you can visit me and shoot me an email at radio@alzheimersspeaks.com. We're going to hear from the Foot Bar Walker, which just reduced their price. So check them out, and we'll be right back.
Introducing the life-changing Foot Bar Walker.
I'm Peggy from Danville, Kentucky, and I'm 91 years old. The Foot Bar Walker revolutionized my care of George. It absolutely benefits the patient and the caregiver both, and that's the beauty of it. It's so easy to use. It folds up just like a dream. I got it in and out of the car without any effort at all. The saving that I made from having to put him in a nursing home came to about $192,000.
Does someone you love use a walker? Do they struggle to get up from a seated position? Are you a caregiver dealing with physical pain and stress as you help your patient? The Foot Bar Walker was designed to assist not only the patient, but also the caregiver. Patients have more control standing up, and no lifting from the caregiver is required. See how it works at thefootbarwalker.com. That's thefootbarwalker.com. Peggy, would you recommend the Foot Bar Walker?
Do I ever? I would not be in the health that I'm in today at this age had it not been for the Foot Bar Walker.
Well, I'm so excited to introduce my gallery of guests today. This is going to be a really fun conversation. And first and foremost, I want to introduce you to Allyson Schrier. Her role as a family care partner sparked a whole career change for her. And she went from technology to focusing on improving the lives of people living with dementia and those that support them. She's going to chat about her experience as a family care partner and how that led to the creation of Zinnia TV. Allyson will talk about Zinnia TV, the products, the goals, the metrics, the successes, and she's also going to give us a brief tour of the site, which I think will be really exciting as well. And just to let you know, she is also the program manager for a project called the Echo Dementia at the University of Washington Memory and Brain Wellness Center. So welcome, Allyson.
Thank you so much, Lori. It's really great to be here today.
Thrilled to have you. I'm going to continue to introduce everybody before we go into our line of questions. So next, I want to go ahead and introduce you to Dr. Carolyn Parsey. She is an innovative researcher and neuropsychologist with the expertise in the intersections of technology and healthcare. She's going to chat with us a bit about the work that she does at the University of Washington Memory and Brain Wellness Center. And then she's going to talk also about brain changes that are associated with dementia. So welcome, Dr. Parsey. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. Next, I want to introduce you to Keri Pollock. There are two things that immediately come to mind when you talk to Keri. One is the woman loves coffee, and two, she loves to engage with her work that benefits older adults and their families. And she brings more than 25 years of marketing, communication, training, and business development knowledge and expertise to aging and social services. And Lord, don't we know we need that. So today, Keri's going to talk about her company, which is called Aging Wisdom, and her interest in supporting the aging population. Among services that she offers, she has a professional care partners that also use the Zinnia TV to support their clients. So we're going to be able to hear from that angle as well. And she's going to chat with us about those experiences. So thank you for your time for joining us today, Keri.
Oh, certainly. Thank you, Lori.
Great. And last but not least is Carolyn Lukert. And she is part of a team supporting her mom, who is living with Lewy body dementia. So she is also a consultant on the Teepa Snow Positive Approach Care Team, which Most people in the dementia ring know about that because Teepa has had just such an incredible force around the world in terms of her technique. So Carolyn helps others explore those strategies for their own dementia-related situations. And as part of that role, she also facilitates education and support series for care partners and in their roles. So thank you so much for joining us, Carolyn. I really appreciate it very much.
You are most welcome, and I am happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me to participate.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. I'm going to start the conversation out with Dr. Parsey, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your work and what do you do that really supports families living with Alzheimer's disease or other dementias?
Yeah, so my work has always been kind of in this intersection of technology and aging, and then more specifically people with cognitive impairment. And so recently my work has been in identifying pitfalls in the use of technology in older adults and people with cognitive impairment, and then trying to address some of those issues to help people use technologies successfully, but then also really get the benefits out of them. So in the past, I've done work in smart environments, designing homes that can promote living independently, kind of being able to conduct activities of daily living. So the things we think about like cooking and laundry, managing medications and things like that. How can we use technology in order to keep people living independently for as long as possible? And then more recently has been really focused on more consumer-based technology. So whether they're tablets, cell phones, lots of different apps, and how people with cognitive impairment are interacting with those, and how can we help the designers of those technologies create them with the user in mind. So for those with cognitive impairment.
Well, that's fantastic because I hear those, that whole mix between technology and does it really work for the person with dementia all the time, especially through our dementia chats group. And we have tackled that multiple times, and they're like out there shaking the tree, listen to us because this looks pretty, but it's not functional. And I know one of their biggest battles is upgrades, and the changes. And I know that's a really tough one to work around, but I love the idea of the smart houses, as well as looking at the tablets and the computers and the phones and the overall accessibility. I'm just curious, Dr. Parsey, have you personally been touched by dementia in your own family or circle of friends?
I have. It's what got me interested in working in this in the first place. My grandfather was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease when I was maybe about 14 or 15 years old, and kind of became more prominent when I was in college. And so I became more interested and actually joined a lab that was looking at cognition and technology at that time in people with Alzheimer's disease, and it kind of led down this trajectory. And then, several other members of my family have fallen into the mild cognitive impairment range, or various types of dementia, vascular dementia in particular. So definitely runs true to my heart, as well as just a intellectual interest.
I always find it interesting, the tie-in, and it's amazing how many people have a true tie-in with this, and how it, like you said, projects in their life and what they're going to do with it in making a difference. So kudos to you for following that, for seeing a need and it inspiring you to really make a difference. I want to talk to you too, and have you just speak a little bit about brain changes that occur in mid to late dementia, because a lot of people don't totally understand, what's going on, what can they comprehend, what can't they, and why is that? So if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, it's a difficult topic to tackle in just a couple of minutes, but I'll do my best. One of the things that is particularly challenging, right, is that we have different types of dementia. We have different causes, or what the fancy word is etiologies, but we'll say causes today, of dementia. So Alzheimer's disease, right, being the most common cause of dementia, and can look a little different than something like dementia with Lewy bodies, especially in that kind of moderate stage. But you can suffice it to say that especially in late stage, we start to see a lot of similarities. So the changes in the brain often can start with difficulties with comprehension or with that short-term memory ability. So people often describe it as forgetting things that they were recently told, or a conversation that recently happened, an event that recently happened, right? And what's happening in the brain is that our ability to take in all of that information and then get it into storage, the fancy term for that is called encoding. So getting information from the outside. So whether that's something we're looking at, something that we hear, something that we may be interacting with, getting that information into storage is really one of the big breakdowns in dementia. And so that gets compacted even more by some of the auditory and visual changes that happen as well, just in normal aging, right? So as we experience hearing loss, as we experience vision changes, we're seeing changes in the brain as well that combine with those that make it even kind of that exacerbate it, that make it worse. So in later stages, we start to see more difficulty too with kind of the more complex skills. So being able to think creatively, or comprehend complex concepts. And this kind of ties into some of the work that Allyson has been doing with Zinnia TV and thinking about what types of content can people really appreciate and how much is overload, right? At what point is it too much?
Oh, that was very helpful. Because again, I think that there's so much information out there, and people don't quite understand what puts somebody in that later stage category. And I can't wait to learn a little bit more about with Allyson and your conversations, regarding how do you present the best kind of product for this stage, because and this is my personal opinion, so comment all you like, but I think this end stage has been an area that really hasn't been addressed, and there hasn't been a lot of support in terms of engagement. And so I am just so thankful that this exists, because I just think this is incredibly important for us. So Dr. Parsey, thank you so much for your time on that. Allyson, I'm going to go to you next, and I want to ask you a little bit about your personal story and your connection to dementia, if you don't mind first.
Yeah, so my personal story around dementia, Lori, is most focused on my relationship with my husband. So he we lost him a couple of years ago, but he was one of the rare 5% or fewer of people who received their diagnosis of some form of dementia younger than the age of 65. So in his case, he was 47 when he was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. And we had been looking for 6 years or more to find a diagnosis. What's going on with my husband? So I would say that he was probably in his early 40s when he was pretty soundly presenting as a person whose brain was changing because of dementia. Shortly after he was diagnosed, my stepfather was diagnosed with vascular dementia. And around the same time, my stepmother was presenting with mild cognitive impairment that went on to probably be Alzheimer's disease, although she did not get a formal diagnosis.
Wow, that's a lot. that's a lot of experience.
You're telling me.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you took that and you pushed forward to make a difference for other families. I think that is just so honorable, because you lived it on multiple levels, and in multiple relationships as well, because every person, as we know, is different. Every relationship is different, and so it complicates how do you meet that need. I'm wondering, in terms of developing and creating Zinnia TV, how did you take those relationships and caring roles and kind of come up with this idea?
Yeah, so an experience that I have in common with many care partners is I reached a point that most caregivers do. I think, where it became too challenging for me to support my husband at home any longer, especially given that our kids were quite young, given the age of his diagnosis. They were just 12 and 15 when he was diagnosed. So when he moved into a care community, I became aware pretty instantly and bothered by how much time my husband and the other folks in the community spent in front of a television. And I had started already doing a deep dive, trying to figure out what is going on in my husband's brain and what can he do and what can't he do. And I had discovered some of the things that Dr. Parsey spoke about, the fact that his concentration was really impaired, and the ability to track rapidly moving images was challenging. The ability to follow conversations was challenging. And I know from the work that I also studied with Teepa Snow and became certified as a consultant. And that's actually how I met Carolyn Lukert. And I know that Teepa talks about the fact that people in middle stage dementia typically can miss like 1 in every 4 words spoken. So it's really hard to track something that's moving at a standard auditory rate. And also people have difficulty tracking a plot because of that concentration ability and the ability to process information as it comes in and the ability to tell fact from fiction. So knowing all of that and watching the people who my husband was with and my husband get agitated while they were watching TV, get bored, fall asleep, lots of daytime sleeping, which then resulted in them not sleeping at night, which resulted in medication to get them to sleep, which resulted in medication to make them stay up. I mean, it was terrible. And so I just thought, wow, why isn't there something that is appropriate for people who are living with dementia to watch if they're going to watch TV? And so I started looking for it. Where is this thing? Where is this programming that takes into account what people are no longer able to do?
Well, I think that is wonderful. I love that you pointed out those factors about, the loss of catching all the words, the inability to follow the plot, the fact from fiction. I know for myself as care partner, I didn't know any of those things, really. I knew I could tell that she wasn't following. My mom wasn't able to follow a plot. Mm-hmm. And I saw how frustrating that was to her. And since my work in this, I've heard it so many times where they feel less than. I can't even follow a TV show, and that was something we did as a family just to kind of relax. Or and the fact versus fiction, I think, is really an important one as well, because most people, I think, even in a lot of care communities, don't understand this. And I'll never forget the day I saw my mom just hysterical. And I thought she was upset because I was cleaning out her closet, even though it was under her direction. But that's what I thought it was about. And here we were bombing Iraq on the TV, and she thought that was happening right outside the door. And just crocodile tears, scared to death. And, I was trying to calm her down. And as a care partner, I didn't make the connection. And then all of a sudden it hit me, and I turned off the TV, and boom, instantly she was calmed down. And so these factors are extremely important to families and communities and really anybody that serves, how these things can come into play. Why don't you share the screen?
Zinnia TV is basically, it's a library of many, many, many videos that have been specifically created to be engaging for and to create connection for people who are living with dementia. And so they are short videos, generally about 10 minutes long, bunch of different categories. For people who are not watching the video, there are videos that have to do with nature, with places, with interests, animals, and nostalgia. If I just open up the nature videos, for instance, I can just click on it. I have the option to watch all, which means that it will automatically start playing the first video in the library and then move on to the next one and the next one. And so we see that we have things like the forest, birds, underwater, flowers, night sky. And these videos are very gently paced. There is no dialogue, there is no plot, there is no guessing what's actually going on the screen. We at Zinnia TV do not at all advocate anything like, hey, we've created this TV station, so now you can park somebody in front of this all day long. We don't think anybody should be left in front of a television all day long. But what we do think is that if people are going to watch TV, it could be helpful for them to watch something that will allow them to make a greater connection. And what we have found is that these videos are also an opportunity to create engagement and connection between the person who is watching TV with the person with dementia, where we can have reminiscence about the time that we were looking at flowers, or that we took a nature hike, or that we hung out and watched a bunch of birds. So moving into the animals for just a moment, in any of these categories, we can again watch one or watch all of them. I'll go ahead and just select a video just to so you have a sense of what I'm talking about. As an auditory track, we use music, typically pretty soothing music, as well as sound effects. And we have really pivoted as we've gone along with the development of this product. We used some sound effects here and there until we found out that people were really connected to the sound effects. And so we've started adding them in many of our videos. I feel I need to pause there in case people aren't watching the video and they're just listening, that wasn't the sound of everybody snoring, that was the sounds of the cats purring. So while the videos are playing, I have the option to go in and manipulate the speed. So even if this is still too fast for somebody to be able to process, I can go in and drop it down by 50%. And we find that especially for people who are caring for folks with later stages of dementia, that's a feature that they really enjoy quite a bit. Something that we've added to our library that I really like a lot are these activities, and activities that can be shared in individual or group settings. We have sing-alongs in different languages. We have games like trivia and conversation starters. And we also have videos that are focused on activities of daily living. So if there is somebody who, for instance, is less likely to take a drink of water on their own, or to want to eat, or to want to bathe, the idea is that we can play the Stay Hydrated video or the Get Clean video to give people a sense of what's coming. There's a care community that has been working with us who uses this Eat Lunch video, for instance. They play it as people are coming into the dining hall. And what they found is that it has really had a calming effect. As people are moving into the dining hall, they see the video playing with food being prepared, people eating food, and then suddenly they understand why I'm here. I'm here to eat lunch. And so it gets rid of confusion and agitation, which is really a lovely thing. And then we also have greetings videos where we have dialogue, but it's very, very slow paced, very clear. And the idea is that we're doing simulated presence therapy, where we have a person who is explaining things and talking in a really mellow tone, helping people understand what it is that they are seeing. So that's kind of a quick overview of what Zinnia TV looks like. So Zinnia, Zinnia TV.
Well, you know, what I love about this is just the calming effect of every single category. And I think in the world we live in, we all need that calming effect, not just people with dementia. I mean, I can see using this with myself, my grandkids. I mean, we just all need kind of that peace and that serenity. And that is I think it's a huge piece that so often is overlooked. People are so used to, well, we'll just keep them busy. We'll just keep them busy. And one of my favorite sayings was by Harry Urban, who is living with dementia for quite some time now. And I'll never forget, on Dementia Chats, he said, You know, if there's one thing I'd like care partners to remember, is that I like to relax before I got dementia, and I still do. So sit down with me and enjoy the fact that I am relaxed, and allow yourself to be relaxed. Because a lot of times, you know, as care partner, we're like, you know, we're in high gear and we're trying to figure out the next thing that we have to do. And a lot of times they would just like to sit with us. And a lot of times you don't have to say anything. It's just that presence to presence that you're gifting one another. So beautiful, beautiful design. The website's easy to maneuver. The pictures are gorgeous and engaging. I have to ask you, how'd you come up with the name though for the company? I always find that interesting when I'm talking with authors or people who have developed products.
Sure. So the name Zinnia TV is named after the zinnia flower. I'm a big gardener, and so I'm always drawn to flowers and flower names. And zinnia is a flower that thrives in even the crappiest of conditions. So even when things are terrible, zinnia flowers still seem to bloom and to look beautiful. And so we just want to honor the fact that people living with dementia can still thrive and can still bloom. Additionally, I know that flowers often have like a meaning, and the meaning for the zinnia flower is actually memories of a forgotten friend. So those two things come together. Something else I just wanted to point out briefly, because you mentioned the beauty of the Zinnia TV site and the content. When I had the idea for Zinnia TV, I started hunting around for like, but who can make it? I mean, I have an idea, but then what do you do? And so I wound up meeting a phenomenal guy by the name of Frank Lee, who it was formerly with Apple, where he designed their Memories product, which is the product that allows photos to turn into little videos on your phone. And so I, through connections, reached out to him and explained what I wanted to do. And he said, I can do that for you. So that's what he did.
Wow, how cool is that? Well, he's done a wonderful job, and what a great team you've made together. And I love the symbolism of the name. I mean, it really is just perfect, you know. And to me, I think bringing and shedding light on the beauty that is still there, you know, with this disease, I think is extremely, extremely important. So who's your real target audience here? I mean, I know I babbled on of I could use it, my grandkids could use it, but you know, who are you? Who are you after, I guess? Who do you think
so along those lines of Zinnia TV appealing to a cross section of people, I will just share with you what I thought was a funny story. A friend of mine reached out, who I had sent the link to, reached out and said, oh my God, I find that I have been sitting now for an hour and a half just binging your videos. I love them. Does that mean I have dementia? No. It just means you need to calm down a bit. But I think that the original audience for me, like the truest to my heart, is family care partners, because those are my people, right? That's where I come from, is how do I, as a family care partner, know that, for instance, I can put this little video on. I'm going to put on the ski video because my husband is crazy about skiing, and I'm going to take 10 minutes and I'm going to clean the kitchen, or I'm going to go fold some clothes. And I know that for this little window of time, he's going to be absorbed. So that is what really spoke to me. And also later in the disease, when my husband could no longer talk, if I were to show him a video that was really captivating for him, we could still have a connection about it, because I could say, look at that dog. Doesn't that dog look like Sam? And we would be right there together. But what we've found is that professional care partners also find Zinnia TV to be a great tool for engaging. And in long-term care communities, people who, the example that I gave, using it in the cafeteria, for instance, or activity directors. We hear from a lot of activity directors who like to use this to build activities around it with groups of people.
Which I can see that making a ton of sense. So really very universal. I mean, one thing I wanted to ask you is, I know I saw this over in the UK and I can't remember where, because I talk with way too many people and I can't store it all in my brain. but they set up a room and they had, they did projections like onto the wall. So it was bigger than a TV. And I just, have you done any of that with your videos where it's not just, I mean, and I hate to say just a TV, but where the impression is even bigger than that? And then it looks like Dr. Parsey has something to add and some knowledge on this as well. But
so, yeah, I'll just briefly say that we love it when people are using a large screen TV. There's a page on our website where we have tips, and one of the tips is make sure the person can see it. Just because it's lovely video, it's not going to do anybody any good if they're 20 feet away from it and their field of vision, stops at about 10 feet. No, we have not had the opportunity to like go up on Times Square or anything, but we would love to do it.
Dr. Parsey, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, this is it's such a neat project and something that I've been talking with a few of my colleagues who are more in the environmental sciences and folks who are very invested in the concept of nature and health and bringing these together and, using those like large projections to have this kind of almost like an immersive experience, kind of this, it's not quite virtual reality because it's not full 360, but just having these, almost that IMAX experience where because it's so big, it feels like you're part of it. Can have a somewhat soothing type of effect on folks, and whether that's a lot of things that they look for is those calming, those nature scenes, whether it's that soothing river, the waves on the beach, and how those can help, especially in those moderate late stages. We can see a lot more of that confusion, which usually leads to irritability, some of those behavioral changes, right? So usually when we're confused, confusion really at the core, right, is some sort of fear, right, or insecurity and worry and vulnerability, right, and people then react to that in different ways, right? Some people cry, some people yell. So those are really the behaviors that we're seeing are a response to that, right, of that vulnerability and fear. And so some of those like big projections and kind of that more immersive experience can not only be helpful in that calming, soothing way, but then as Allyson was talking about a moment ago, of having that social connection with it too. It allows, more than one person to be watching this at once, right? So if you're talking about an assisted living facility and you have multiple people sitting around, well, that's an opportunity potentially for them to connect about, if they're watching dogs or cats, remembering their pets, because those might have an emotional connection. We often remember things that are emotionally attached far better than kind of your typical facts and figures, right? So it's I feel like it's dually helpful. You have the social connection piece or the opportunity for social connection, but then also the content itself and what it's doing for you.
I had an amazing experience at a care community where we were playing the waterfalls video. And here I am thinking about care partner to person with dementia connection. And then I hear behind me these two ladies who have fairly advanced dementia, and they scoot their chairs closer together as they're watching the waterfalls. And one says to the other, "I believe I've been to that waterfall." And the other one says, "Why, I've been there too." And then they carried on a conversation while the videos were playing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I love this.
It's a beautiful thing. Dr. Parsey, has there been research in terms of the physiology of the body changing, with this calmness and things? I don't know if that is something that you're familiar with.
I can speak to it a little bit. So, the parts of the brain that are really that are managing a lot of behavior and emotion are very rudimentary. We're talking about, I sometimes call it like our lizard brain. It's the oldest part of the brain from an evolutionary perspective. And so these are some of the things that are still relatively intact for a very long time. There's a reason why we remain on the top of the food chain as humans, and the ability to preserve a lot of these things is one of those. The the experiences that we've been describing are still tapping into a lot of that rudimentary old, that it's the super central part of the brain. The amygdala is kind of our emotion center, right? And it's part of a larger network, but it's often given most of the kudos for managing our emotional experience. And that is still pretty well preserved for most folks with dementia for quite a long time. It's the reason that they'll still react, in tears or in happiness over things, even though they might not be able to understand the complexity of something that's happening. They still have that very, like I said, rudimentary response. So yeah, it's parts that are pretty resilient, all things considered.
Great, thank you. Allyson, anything you wanted to add?
No, I accept that. I really appreciate the fact that even in the latest stages of dementia, we are still able to communicate with people. We just have to try.
Yeah, it's a whole different level, and I think it's a much more intimate level, and a more meaningful level, actually, or it was for me. It almost got into this spiritual essence of a level of communicating I didn't know existed because I didn't need to go there before. And actually quite beautiful. Keri, I want to go to you next. I want you to tell us a little bit about Aging Wisdom and the work that you're doing to support families living with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias.
Well, I have joined Aging Wisdom about 6 years ago, and it's an aging life care or care management practice that's been around since 2003. And we really help families navigate options for aging well and caring well and living well. And so part of our service offering is creative engagement. So we have a creative engagement program, creative engagement specialist, and that's where the magic of Zinnia TV comes in. When Allyson was first introducing this product, she shared it with us, and our creative engagement specialists have used it quite successfully with clients. And most of our clients are experiencing some level of cognitive change.
Okay, great. Now, one thing I didn't ask you, and I should have initially, was have you been personally touched by dementia in your family or circle of friends? And has that impacted your work?
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's a large reason that I was really attracted to the field of aging to begin with. I have both my grandmothers. One grandmother had Alzheimer's, the other had vascular dementia. I lost my father to Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. And I have a father-in-law who is in the end stages of Alzheimer's. So I have a real strong connection and a really deep interest. Yeah.
Another one with multiple
Sure.
levels there and multiple types. So thanks for sharing that. That always, I think, just helps our audience understand where you're coming from and kind of the passion behind, I think, the work that you do as a whole. How have you found Zinnia TV helpful in terms of your work, and what kind of response are you getting from both individuals and family members?
Oh, sure. Well, I would say I can give you examples specifically about how my colleagues have utilized it within the context of our creative engagement program. So with the creative engagement side of Aging Wisdom, with the care management side, you're really looking at the healthcare, the medical care, and those sorts of really important parts of an individual's overall health and well-being. But often what gets neglected and overlooked, and I know that Allyson saw this as she was describing earlier, especially in a lot of care communities, is just feeding that creative, the spiritual, the emotional, the mental side, and really just the sense of purpose that we all have, even towards the end of life. And so where Zinnia comes in is we use it really intentionally. So with creative engagement, it's very tailored to a person's strengths, and it's tied to an individual's interests and their personal history. So the first example that came to mind is probably one of the first colleagues that use Zinnia TV is with a client that we had for many years, passed away last year. And he was a very avid hiker and camper. You know, we have an awful lot of mountains and beautiful places to go here in the state of Washington, but he was also a pediatric cardiac surgeon. And so it was the outdoor videos and the children's videos that really resonated with this client, especially towards the end of his life, that there was still very much the soul of who he was. And so Amy could share those videos with him, and sometimes it could elicit conversation, but more than anything, it had a calmness that would settle over him if there perhaps was just a little, agitation. Sometimes it could lead to a reminiscence or some sharing conversation. But that was just really tailored to who this particular client was and just worked really beautifully. Another example I'm thinking of, my colleague Sonia has a client who is multilingual and also is a world traveler, and additionally was an ambassador. And so again, there's these travel videos that are part of Zinnia that Sonia uses with this particular client. And it's used more as conversation prompts, because that's then where this particular client can share about her world travels and the world leaders that she has worked with. And, just that lovely reminiscence tool. The other cool thing is Sonia, and you mentioned this, Laura, you see the value where you could use this with your grandkids. So my colleague Sonia, her mother is 93 and isn't experiencing any cognitive change, but because of COVID, hasn't been able to do the travel that she normally does. And so she has found a real joy in watching the travel videos again. And then also with the animal videos, sharing those with her great-grandchildren. And the great-grandchildren, they're the preschool and the early elementary school age. And so this is sort of a multi-generational tool in many ways, and has worked really successfully through COVID and also virtually. So people don't necessarily need to be together, but they can be like we are on Zoom and share it and watch and have conversation as well. So those are just a few of the shining examples, but it's been something we've absolutely loved having at our fingertips.
Well, it's wonderful. One of the things that hit me when you were, talking about, people kind of get in that sense of calmness, and we've mentioned that. And I think, with calmness comes kind of that joyful peacefulness that I think is undervalued a lot, and overlooked by people. But to me, I think what's even overlooked even more is when someone is in that space, they're not in that figuring out that I don't fit, or how do I fit, or what is wrong, and how do I fix this sense of I'm broken and I'm not part of. And to be able to remove that and to give them that sense of calm and engagement and joy, that truly is one of those priceless moments in life. To be able to flip that really almost on a dime. I guess what I have seen, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but I know with my own mom, I would see moments like that. Just instantly change any anxiety and stress. She would be focused, and I don't know if it's a person with dementia wants out of that trap of feeling anxious and feeling frustrated and like they don't fit, and they grab onto it, or if it's just, I don't know what it is, but it works. And I just think it's something more and more people need to know about there. So thank you so much for those examples. Carolyn, I haven't forgotten about you. I would really like to talk to you about creating a balance for the during the day for a person with dementia whose abilities have changed as things progress, and sometimes it's not even a progression, it's just a bounce of symptoms. I know a lot of people with dementia have told me, and please tell me if you sense this or heard this from your loved one, but that they view the symptoms really more like an emotional roller coaster. Like you don't hop out of bed and you're high all day and life is great. You know, someone cuts you off on a lane and you have that grrr moment. And they talk about how they go through all of the phases. If it's, no matter what scale you're using, if it's a 1 through 3, 1 through 4, 1 through 7, they say they go through all of the phases all day long. They just don't tell care partners because they don't want them to worry. But they said it's really more of an emotional roller coaster in terms of a phase of their feelings, and they try to protect us in that. So I'm really interested in how you see the day and the balance or imbalance of a person living with dementia, and trying to do that in a family environment or a community environment. It's complicated.
It is complicated. And, so for me, and I'll jump back to the question you've asked everybody, just so you don't have to come back to that. But my family experience has been pretty big. My dad had dementia with Lewy bodies. My mom has dementia with Lewy bodies. My grandmother had what they thought was Alzheimer's, and I would agree, and 2 uncles with vascular dementia. So through the last, I would say, 12 years, if we don't count my grandmother, who was in the 70s, my exposure to different dementias and similar dementias has been pretty high, both in my family as well as in community life. And what I do notice and have noticed, Lori, is that you are right. There are fluctuations hour to hour and day to day in a person, and where a person is in their experience and what they're encountering and how well they are able to manage their own emotions. And, Dr. Parsey mentioned amygdala management, and, I will tell you from my own perspective that Zinnia TV has been incredible in terms of helping with calming an amygdala. And in my mom's case, who is, now my area of focus, or my person of focus, we've recently had some challenges with her own health and had some hospitalization and rehab, and just very recently now living in memory care after having been supported at home for 5 years, or close to 5 years. And if I didn't have Zinnia TV, I'm not sure how I would have made it, quite honestly, during times of crisis, when I could just literally pull out my iPad and call up Zinnia TV and just help transition her when we were in the emergency room for 2 days straight, or coming to visit in rehab when, because of COVID restrictions, we could visit 2 times a week for 45 minutes at a time. And we had to first transition into that visit because she was so upset. This became just a critical tool for us. And just now on a day-to-day basis, I mean, I think what I can really appreciate, and Allyson, I don't know if this came from your exposure through PAC or somewhere else, but the fact that in the full complement of choices in Zinnia TV, you hit all the areas that we talk about for a balanced day: rest and restoration, self-care, fun and play, and even productive activity, which everybody needs every day. And it helps. It's just such a nice way to structure, to, Keri, you talked about a real kind of mindful approach to creativity and to using Zinnia TV. And absolutely, I subscribe to that same theory. How do we use this wonderful technology to be able to create that balanced day that a person living with dementia so needs, and needs help, just guidance and support to get there. So for me, it's been really helpful, both personally and in my role at PAC. I do consultations with families around the world. But I can't tell you the number of times when a care partner might say, I just need 10 minutes to do something, but my person, my loved one is I can't, is shadowing me all the time. And we talk about using Zinnia TV, or how do we use it to help transition? Allyson, similar to you were saying how using Zinnia TV in a community environment to help transition as people are coming into breakfast. It's just, I'm amazed at how well thought out the categories are, the music is, the games. My mom's favorite is the Famous Faces trivia that we probably have played. We could literally play it every day and that would work for her, but just such a variety. And we sing to Mary Sue all the time. So I was thrilled when I saw her on there. So it's just, just such a great variety, such a great tool. So that's how I use it in a nutshell.
Well, I appreciate your feedback and your insights on that. I just think, how cool would this be in so many different settings, from a clinic to a hospital to a dental office to, even on an airplane. People get anxious and different. It's endless, the use that this could come into play in the care centers, at home. And I too was going to mention the music, because I think that is such a big, important piece too for people, where they get so much joy and so much pleasure. Well, I can't thank you all enough for spending this time with us. Allyson, I want to ask you, what have we missed that you want people to know about Zinnia TV, and how do they sign up and access it, for themselves?
Thank you for asking, and thank you for having us. Zinnia TV is just available. It's a website, zinniatv.com, ZINNIA, like the flower, TV.com. And there are a bunch of different options that people can use to watch it. There's always a free channel where we have just a small sampling of videos, but for people to just try it out and see if they like it. And then we have a subscription, a very low cost subscription service to keep the lights on. So that is available. It's all of that information is on the website. We also have posted 1-minute clips of many of our videos on YouTube that anybody can go and just check those out. I think that one of the things that I have found is that some people do rely on YouTube as a way to stream lots of videos. And I think that it's amazing, the stuff that's out there. The challenge is that when you walk away and that video ends, then there's a commercial that may or may not be appropriate for the person living with dementia. And so one of the things that I love about our video streams is that they are commercial free, and they will always be commercial free.
Well, and with YouTube, there's commercial, now they're popping up in the middle of stuff too, so and then there's so much more going around it as well. If somebody hasn't popped it up. Now, with your subscription, do they vary from, like, say, a family to a memory care to a home care type service?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So family care partners, it's $4.99 a month, or you get 12 months for the price of 10. And then we have a home for people who are doing home care, like Keri's group, and then long-term care community, where we do a pricing depending on how many folks you're supporting.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you, ladies, so much for spending this time with us. I know I found this fascinating. I think it's just absolutely a fantastic service, and it is something that has been needed for many, many years, and will help families and professionals alike out with this, and most important, people living with dementia. And so, again, you can go to Zinnia TV, ZINNIATV.com, And you can reach Allyson by just going to Allyson@ZinniaTV.com if you'd like to email her as well. Again, thank you so much for raising light on this wonderful opportunity, and Dr. Parsey telling us a little more about dementia and the mid and kind of end stages there that people don't understand. Really do appreciate it very, very much. So thank you. Have a wonderful time. For our audience, please like, click, and share. You know, don't keep a nugget or a gem a secret. Pass it along. I mean, you know, this can help other people too. So make everybody's life easier. That's what Alzheimer's Speaks was developed to do, was to connect people to services, products, and tools that they can assess for themselves and see what they think. So thank you again. We'll talk to you all soon. Bye now.